This is a great looking crowd. And I want to thank you for joining me today. A few months ago when CJ reached out and said, Adriane, would you be our keynote speaker at the Luncheon? And I've been to these luncheons both on a local level and national level for many years. And I have to tell you, I don't always jump up and down when people ask me to speak. But I did, for the occasion and opportunity, to talk about jobs for Washington graduates. And that's because I have a pretty nice history when it comes to jobs for America's graduates. You see, when I was maybe coming out of college, that would have been 1980, and yes, I am that old. There was a crisis going on in the United States, and it zeroed in the state of Delaware. Now, you heard Dennis say that over 1 million young people don't graduate from high school. So in the state of Delaware, back in the late 70s, coming up on 1980, the Governor DuPont, said, I have to do something. I have to fix this problem. Our state cannot continue in this way. So he leaned on some educational professionals and people who had a get-it-done attitude. And he asked them to do something, to come together and develop some program that the state of Delaware could undertake to turn the situation around. And in fact, that was the beginning of Jobs for America's Graduates. Now, we have a 31-state network. And I am excited that I was actually introduced to Jobs for America's Graduates, not then, but when I lived in the state of Arizona. I was working for Honeywell in one of its aerospace divisions. And Honeywell had been an active participant, donator to Jobs for America's Graduates for many years. And Honeywell was making a $10,000 donation at an event just like this. And I was the exec who got asked to come and present the check. The governor was there, and I thought, this is great, I'd love to come. And I came and sat in a room much like this one, was able to hand over that nice big poster check for $10,000. And the governor, Janet Napolitano, was there with the local head of Jobs for Arizona's Graduates to receive that donation. I was talking to the governor, and I had been on her workforce, the Technology and Innovation Task Force that she put together, and a number of things happened. The person who was on JAG's national board representing Honeywell was retiring. And I was asked if I would step up and join the national board. Well, it was amazing because I thought, I love this organization, I'd learned a little bit about it, and now I get to see it grow and impact on a national level. And I thought that was one of the most exciting things that I could do. Now, it didn't take me a second to say yes, because I'm a joiner. I joined things. I was engaged in high school. You know, I was a part of the chorus, drama, sports. I was a cheerleader. And don't talk about cheerleaders because we have it going on. You know, many organizations. I was a joiner. And I remember seeing kids who were kind of the kids that were off to the side. The ones that kids like me looked at and, you know, kind of felt sorry for because they weren't focused on what their future could be. And here was this organization that reached out to those kids least likely to graduate and was able to develop a track record collecting data for over 34 years, and is pleased to tell you that not only do we follow these kids through high school, but 1 year post-graduation to look for positive outcomes. I was on a board call this morning. The results of the 2013 class, which graduated June a year ago, having followed them for 1 year, 91% graduation rate. The program seemed so simple, and I kept saying, what? I don't get it. How could something something so efficiently administered. You saw the job specialist. That's the secret sauce. The national organization provides training, curriculum, all of the materials that are needed for an organization like Jobs for Washington Graduates to become an organization that so far has served 4,000 students. So 91% of those, think about it, were saved. That 4,000 is the 91% that we, through our efforts with this national organization, dispersed to 31 states. Public-private partnership makes a difference in the lives of these young people. Now, there's a national event that takes place in November every year. It's in Washington, D.C. These students around our country work hard to raise money, to get the opportunity to come to this national training program for a week in Washington. It is a highlight for them. It's an exciting opportunity for them to come. Some of them have never left their communities, and they go to Washington, D.C., and their world gets bigger. Possibility for them gets bigger. And not only will students stand before you on the video and on the stage and talk about what JAG, or Jobs for Washington Graduates, has done for them, it will touch your heart. Years ago, when I heard my first student stand before a group, she talked about the circumstances which brought her into JAG. She said, through her life, she had never belonged to anything. And for me, a joiner, my heart just went out to this young woman. Never belonged to anything. JAG approached her and said, we'd like you to become a part of this organization. And JAG is not the organization that I saw in high school, the kids that didn't make it and weren't gonna make it. JAG is an embracing organization that says you can. There's no shame in our game when it comes to JAG. JAG is looked at as something positive in the schools where these students are participating. And I love that. And these job specialists, the heart and soul of this organization, actually institutionalize caring. Now, I have a 16-year-old daughter. I care, right? But it breaks my heart to know that that's not always the way it goes. Those million students that drop out so often don't have someone who has the capacity, in some cases, to care. They're homeless, they're struggling with school, and they just don't have the support system that I'm committed to my family. And I'm sure you are to yours. And that's why we on the national level are trying desperately to find a way to take this organization to scale. Now, when I think about the cost of supporting a student, sometimes from junior high school where the notion of dropping out actually happens in so many cases, and junior high school, which is why JAG developed a junior high school program as well, because we want to not allow that possibility of not graduating to even enter their minds. Used to be just 12th grade we tracked, not anymore. So these kids need our help. Now I'll tell you a little story. A few weeks ago, I was in Washington, D.C. Now, I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, just 90 miles south of Washington, and I used to always have childhood memories of going to visit family in Washington. Now, a different framework pops in my head every time I go to Washington, D.C. And that's because there used to be a job for Washington, D.C. graduates. It was alive and well and working. It lost its funding. And as much as at the national level we fought to try to help keep Jobs for Washington, D.C. graduates alive, it closed down. And it breaks my heart because once we start these programs and these kids get involved and become within the warmth of what Jobs for America's Graduates does for them, imagine when all of a sudden they're a sophomore or a junior and the program goes away. The world has let them down yet again. Had them going, had them headed toward that 91% graduation rate. So for me, going into Washington, D.C. has a different memory But I did go to LaSalle Elementary School when I was there. There were 60 girls in the audience. I was standing in the back of the room at this assembly, and they were talking about a robotics club that they were just starting. And these girls were slumped in their seats, they were looking all bored, like, oh, I'm gonna have time for this. And they introduced me. And when I walked into the front of the room, they kind of stood up like, who is this black woman coming to talk to me? Because it was a predominantly black audience. And I looked at those girls, and I just thought, if I can touch one of them, if I can get into her heart and help her believe what's possible, maybe just by joining the robotics club, then maybe their world would change. And I have to tell you, at the end of our little connection, there were about 24 girls who went over to sign up, and they were smiling. And then one of the teachers said, come over here, the 5th graders want to say hello. And I walked over to the 5th graders, and one young lady gave me a hug like I have never felt in my life. She hung on because she had hope. I helped her that day with hope. And I share this with all of you because we don't know when or how we may touch the lives of people who wouldn't have that opportunity without us. And so I ask you today to really appreciate what this organization does, to appreciate how just a little bit of support to help an organization like JWG expand from 16 to 32 to 45 to 100 schools. And maybe one day we'll be able to imagine a state without dropouts. Thank you.